Hey there, streakers. Hopefully, you are having a fantastic day and had a fantastic streaking week. For this podcast, we thought we would bring something back from a year ago, which was highly inspirational, and that is our interview with the president of the Streak Running Association, Mr. Mark Washburn. This was inspirational just because of everything that the Streak Running Association has done to help individuals establish running streaks and look at their health and fitness in a different way than maybe they have before. This conversation is highly inspirational. It'll be a lot of fun. So if you didn't hear it the first time, this is your first time. If you did hear it before, you'll love hearing it again. I hope you enjoy it. And here we go. Well, hey there, fellow streakers. Welcome to the Streaking Show. We have a guest who I have wanted to talk to for so long. He is the president of the United States Running Streak Association, and he was named president in April 2011 by the president and founder, the then president and founder, John Strumsky. In 2012, he expanded the list from just streak runners in the United States to the streak runners around the world and founded Streak Runners International, which has over 5,500 streaks listed on their website from athletes located in 66 countries. Now, in his day job, he does a little bit more than running. He teaches history and political science courses at the County College of Morris in Randolph, New Jersey. And just so you know, his streak right now of streak running is 11,761 days, or 32.2 years. Let's welcome to the show, Mr. Mark Washburn. Let's get streaking. What is streaking and why should you do it?
Streaking is how you set up personal winning streaks. Look at who you want to be and what you need to do to become that person. This is Streaking.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jami.
And we are streakers. Through 30 years of marriage and 7 children, we have learned the power of consecutive consistency, or streaking.
To start streaking is simple. You just follow these 3 laws. Make it laughably simple, keep a record, and join the streaking community.
Streaking is your hidden superpower. With it, you will consistently progress and grow in whatever area of life you want.
In this podcast, Jeff and I will share all the fun, exciting, serious, solemn, wonderful parts of family, spiritual, professional, and personal life, and how streaking powers it all.
So join us in the conversation, join the movement, and start streaking today.
Awesome. Mark, we're so excited to have you. Thank you for coming. This is exciting for us because reading about Diane and the Shumways.
Yeah, the Shumways.
Thank you.
They were, yes, exactly.
The Shumways were our inspiration, and that's how we found the Streak Running Association. And even though I'm not a part of it, I've always been inspired by what you guys do. And it really was studying your group of people that kind of led us to discovering kind of the principles of streaking. And so tell us a little bit about how you got started running and then how you got started like having a streak for running.
Well, I got started running. I ran in high school, but I ran track. I ran the 100-yard dash and 220, which shows you how old I am because they haven't used yards in years.
Oh, yeah. It's been a long time.
I quit the 220 because it was too far for me to really go. And so I'd be the last person to expect to be doing what I'm doing with running and doing marathons. As far as adult running, I started in my 20s. One of my roommates' girlfriend came home and said she signed up for a 10K. So the next thing you know, we were all signing up to do the same 10K. It was 1984. And from there, I just never looked back. I ran that 10K, loved it. And now I've done close to 900 races since 1984. I've done over 40 marathons, including the last 17 Boston marathons.
Wow, that's amazing. The last 17 you've run the Boston Marathon, last 17 Boston Marathons.
I should point out the last 2 I actually were virtual. They gave you the option of running it in person or virtual.
Okay.
Actually 2020, they didn't give you any option, but last year they did. And so I did another marathon on the day that the Boston Marathon was running, mainly because my wife she's in charge of the children's book show in Morristown, New Jersey. And so they had their show and it was hard for me to leave. So to go up to Boston. So I decided to do a closer marathon to my
Oh,
house.
that's awesome. Okay, I love your family already. You run and your wife does the children's book show. That's awesome.
Yes, yeah. She's
So over the years, have you seen more people running than kind of as you've continued to do races, you kind of have a unique perspective of having been runner for a while. Do you feel like there's more people running now than what there used to be?
It goes through cycles.
Okay.
The 80s, there are a lot of people who picked it up then. I thought there was kind of less people in the 90s for some reason. I don't know what happened. And then more women got involved in it. So we see that with our Streak Association. When we first put our list together, I think we had just one woman on the list, and now it's getting closer to an even split between men and women
Men
on
and
our
women,
list.
so
So
you're seeing
a lot more women are running out there.
So how did you get introduced to the streak running? I mean, you were a runner, but then how are you like, you know what, I'm going to start the streak? Was it John that basically introduced you to it? Did you find them, or how did you
No,
find it?
Yeah, there was no United States Running Streak Association. That's not going to be founded until 2000. So I started in 1989. I knew Ron Hill had started. In fact, I think I read Runner's World when he was celebrating his 25th anniversary. He started in 1964, so that could have been 1989. For me, it was just kind of a fluke. I've had a lot of different jobs before I became a college professor, and I was a stockbroker at one time. Although I tell my students, if I was any good at being a stockbroker, right, do not take advice from me. If I was any good, I'd still be a stockbroker.
You wouldn't be a professor.
Yeah. So we had to go on this training like the first week in January. And of course, I organized people to run every day after our training session. And so it was like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I came back and I was like, oh, I ran 3 weeks in a row without missing a day. I wanted to see how long I'd ever gone without missing a day. It was like 50 days when I was training for my first marathon. So I thought, oh, let's see if I can match that 50 days. So I've matched it and
Yes, you
And
have.
then some.
and then some, yes.
You know what? I want to pause right here for just a second, because this is what you just said is a critical mindset that many of our streakers out there. So as you know, this show is broadcast all over the world. We have streakers from all over the world that are streaks in many different areas of life, and the running streak is one of them. But one of the things that you just said is so critical is your mindset changed from doing the activity to how many days in a row can I string this together? How long can I actually make this happen? And that sounds to me like that changed everything. I mean, for you, I mean, and this is interesting because as you look at the streak list, you're number 58 on your streak list here, tied with 3 other people at number 58 there. But
Right.
that's pretty amazing to have that mindset shift to where it's like, no, I'm going to run every day. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and I was kind of maybe I was a little morbid, but I thought someday I'm not going to be able to run, so I'm going to try to just take advantage of it when I can, and so I have. I was
Yeah.
33 at the time, and now I'm 66, so I'm trying to take advantage of being able to get out there and run and enjoy good health.
What do you feel like as you look at this? I kind of been wanting to ask you, what lessons in life have you learned from running? And then kind of what lessons do you feel like you've learned from having a streak around running? Kind of 2 separate questions, but because I felt like when I started running, I started to notice how many things in life I could learn from because of runs that I had that related to a run, like just being able to understand that there's good days and bad days. And sometimes that's not always in my control, but just still getting out there. So what kind of lessons over the years have you felt that you've learned from running?
Question, and I did not plan my philosophy hat for today's discussion. So I'm sure there's been thousands of lessons along the way, just persistence. There were times when I've struggled to keep the streak going, and I've been able to keep it going. And for me, it's also health and trying to keep active, keep moving. But that's a good question, Jamie. I wish I should have thought of that a little bit.
No, I feel like you already did. Just the things that you're saying in terms of health is one, that being able to just get up and keep going. And then you mentioned that you've had, a couple times that it's been tough to keep the streak alive. Is there any one particular time that you can remember that you
Well,
had to do something kind of crazy?
yeah. What happened was this was 2015. I was signed up to do the Richmond Marathon, and it was on a Saturday. Usually marathons are on a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
So I teach college and I had Friday classes. And so I had to teach. And then I drove with my wife and a friend to Richmond. We ran into a lot of traffic. Earlier that week, I got a flu shot, and I know this isn't supposed to happen, but I did not, somehow I had a bad reaction to that flu shot. So I wasn't feeling great. And so I did the marathon, but at the end, I fell. And according to my wife, I must have fainted because I didn't try to break the fall. So
you just went down.
You just went down.
I went down. I broke my nose in a few places.
Oh, wow.
I had a concussion. I don't remember falling. I don't remember being in the medical tent. I don't remember being in the ambulance. I don't remember being in the emergency room. The next time I remember was around 6 o'clock that night, and I was in a Richmond hospital. So the doctors
You're like, this isn't the finish line.
This is not the finish line. So the doctors did not. First of all, I wanted to know how I did in the marathon. That was like my first question. I had qualified for Boston, believe it or not. So
wow.
Really? So your first question after waking up in the ER was, what was the finish time and did I qualify?
Did I qualify?
Yeah, yes. So I did. So the doctors were not pleased because I had my Streak Runners International shirt on, and they were like, okay, your streak is over, because they knew that was part of my shtick. And they wouldn't let me out until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day.
The next day.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
And at 3:30, I was out. And my running streak's 3 miles a day.
Yeah.
So I got my 3 miles a day in. So that was kind of a challenge. One of the guys, Bart Yasso, he's from Runner's World, and I saw him at the Chicago Marathon a couple of years later. And I introduced myself as the president of the streak group, and he goes, "I know you. You're the guy who fell at the Richmond Marathon." Because it was kind of like people saw me. I got up and it was at the finish line, so people were cheering me on. And apparently, I don't remember this, but that's what I was told.
That was
yeah.
So you must. Wow. Because if you broke your nose, was it bloody?
Yeah. I had blood all over.
Yeah, you must have looked memorable.
Looked like quite the sight.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It actually made Runner's World. They did a little story on it that so if you Google my name, you'll see it. That there's
we'll have to go look at that. That'll be great.
Absolutely. So how did you get the doctor to? I mean, was he going to keep you so that you like you would have to break the streak, and you convinced him that, hey, my wife will take care of me and I'll be able to get out? Or how did you get out of the hospital? Because was it the next day?
Yes. First of all, it was a female doctor. So you said you used the male term. I just want to.
I apologize. Yeah. So she said.
She said. No way you're gonna run. She was not happy about it, and I'm like shaking my head. Yeah, I won't. And of course, I knew.
Yes,
my mind,
I will not run.
Yes. It's kind of like my wife was like, "You have tunnel vision when it comes to this. You're just like set." But I had staked my claim being part of the Running Streak Association, and so I didn't want it to end unless it really had to end.
Right.
How did that run feel? Just so we have a little bit more perspective. So you got out, you found a place, you ran 3 miles. How did that run feel? I mean, what was it?
Yeah, it was okay. First of all, running after a marathon's never easy. So
right.
No, never
that was
easy.
That was a little challenging. Although they did something to keep my blood flowing in the hospital, and it really actually kind of invigorated my legs. So I don't know what that was all about. So yeah, so that was one incident. And then just recently I got COVID. I was vaccinated and I had been boosted, but in January I did get COVID, and I actually thought I had a stomach flu, because I didn't have lung problems, but it was all in my stomach. And so, of course, I went out for a run, and I was trying to do a 7 mile run, around 4.5 miles. I was in front of this coffee place where my wife was actually meeting some friends. And so I was like, oh, we're going to just stop here. And so I fainted on the ground. I do a lot of fainting, so that was
Wow.
my second big challenge, trying to keep this thing going.
To keep it going.
Go ahead.
What do you say to people that think it's too extreme? That are like, why do you keep doing this if you're fainting?
Yeah, it happens so infrequently. I mean, I've been now running over 11,000 days. So, you're going to have a couple days where it's a challenge. For the most part, it's, you don't even think about it. You put on your shoes. And, for me, it's just a good way to get myself out there, get myself exercise. I have a pretty, my job is to teach. So, I've spent a lot of time reading books and being dormant. And so this is my way of getting out there and being active.
Here's an interesting one for you. We have another streaker. She's a streak swimmer. And she was talking about, she was on an interview and they asked her, they said, well, what about injury? And she said, you're going to get injuries. And how do you feel about that? And she said, well, I look at it this way. Sitting for 8 hours a day is more detrimental than actually swimming for the 20. Her streak is, I think, 500 yards or 500 meters or something like that a day. And she said, I get injured way less than what the new smoking is, which is sitting. And so that was kind of her thought, but.
No, I have a similar view on that. When I do get injured, and everybody gets injured, I see it as an opportunity to look at how I'm running and work on running more efficiently. Because it's usually just one little part of your body that is yelling at you, stop, stop, stop. But, I use that as an opportunity to look at my form, keep my head up, and try to be more balanced in my running.
How did you get to, so now explain to us how you become a streak runner. What qualifies you to become, in your organization, a streak runner?
Good question. We require that you have to do a mile a day, and you have to do it for a year before you'll make our list.
Okay.
The latest person I just got today was Dave McGilvery, who is the Boston Marathon director.
Oh, wow.
He submitted his streak. Actually, it started as a challenge to me. I'm a friend of his on Facebook. And so he has his birthday challenge. I signed up and I was like, okay, well, here's my challenge for you. You have to run a year. And he did it. So I was excited to put his name on the list this morning.
Put his name on.
That's wonderful. And how did you choose a mile? What was it? What was it? Was it just like, mile is where we need to play it? Was it just
it came from John Strumsky. He put a mile. When George Hancock, he started the list. And if you want, I can go through all that history of how this whole thing got started. But John Strumsky, when he was putting the list together, he required that you do a mile a day. And actually, there was some pushback when he announced it, because George was just keeping anybody on the list. And apparently there's one guy who just run to the mailbox every day, and he counted that as his streak. So John asked, should there be a minimum, and what the minimum should be. And I forgot the statistics, but it was like 80% wanted there to be a minimum, and then they picked a mile as the minimum mileage. So that's how it got started. It was just John put it there, and people voted. That's what they wanted.
80% of them were like, yeah, a mile sounds about right.
Yeah. We had people who put 3 miles down, things like that. I was more of somebody like, oh, let's celebrate everybody. We could do multiple lists for people to do a mile or 2 miles or 3 miles. Yeah. And I'm glad they didn't do that, because now that I'm in charge of this and I'm in charge of putting these lists together, that would be a nightmare to have. Like,
I was going to say, logistically.
Yeah, having multiple lists of all the distances people would do as their minimum, and that minimum is often changed, as people run into situations.
How do you find that most people find your association as you're adding new people? Is it through running races that they find you, or how do different people find your association?
That's a good question. We have a presence on social media, so I think that's how a lot of people see us. When I took over, I think there was like 250 streaks just in the
Okay.
United States. And now this is 11 years later, we're over 5,500 streaks. So,
Wow.
Wow.
and there's a high barrier to get involved. You have to do a mile a day for a year every day.
Yeah.
So it's not like something like, okay, I
Yeah.
can sign up for this. No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a level of commitment that is
Right, yes.
incumbent in yes.
The thing that I look at, and just as you articulate what it is that you do to become a member of, or to be on the list, because anyone could be a member, but to be on the list, you have to have an active running streak for at least a year.
Right.
What I see, and one of the things that Jamie and I were inspired by, as runners, a mile for us was not something that was hard. In fact, the first law of streaking that we talk about is make it laughably simple. In other words, make it so that you have a floor on which you stand in order to reach for some of the different goals that you have. And when we saw run a mile a day, when Jamie introduced it to me, we both saw it as, you know what, we could do that, run. And for us, and our streak is a little bit different. We're not on the streak registry because our streak is a little bit different with this. It's either run or walk at least 1 mile daily. But what you did for us is help us to see that, you know what, there is a floor. And whatever that floor is, whatever you choose your floor, because your streak is really 3 miles a day. I mean, that's your floor. You're like, you know what? I'm going to do 3 miles a day. That's I don't know if it's laughably simple for you, but it's simple enough to be able to say, I can at least do 3 miles a day to keep the streak alive. And then for others, it may be a mile. I am happy, though, and glad that you set something that was the floor, that you said, this is what it is. And for all of our streakers out there, you can set your floor at whatever it is you want. I mean, that's the beautiful part of streaking is you can say my streak is X. The key is how many days in a row can I keep this going?
Right. We did have some problems with the original definition because John also put in continuous. We didn't really vote on that, but he added the word continuous. And so as watches got better, the younger generation was interpreting that anytime you stopped, whether to tie your shoe or at a traffic stop, you had to start all over again.
Oh, wow.
So for us old
okay.
guys, I measured how far some of the routes were from my car. So that's how I guess, how far I was going at the time. So we would never come up with that concept. I had to take the word out just because one day on Facebook, there was like 250 comments. People are having post little pictures of puppy dogs because people are yelling at each other like continuous or not continuous. But it was really, for safety reasons too, I had to say I had taken it out just because some people run in cities. I don't want them running across the street. I used to have a roommate who did that. He would never stop. He would just run in front of cars.
You would just start out in front of traffic.
I was like, sometimes you got to stop to look both ways.
Yeah.
Or, if you're running with your dog, I don't want that dog to be dragged until you got to a mile so that you could not do what dogs sometimes do when they go
need to do.
out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, question for you: as you've gone along, and this relates back to what we were talking about, does the streak keep you running, or do you do you push the streak? Do you know what I mean? I think that there's sometimes a pull of the streak, and sometimes where you're pushing the streak along. And what have you found?
Oh, that is a good question. I think a little of both, right? I know I do it. I mean, right now I'm so invested in the streak because I've been doing it for so long. So the streak does pull me along, but I was a streaker before there was an association. So before there was, a group of us. So, I just did it on my own as a way to, just keep healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you found how has the community of streakers been beneficial to you kind of in your life? Like, because you started streaking before there was a community.
Right.
But now you not only joined the community, but want to be obviously a leader of that community to keep that community going. What was it about the community that was important that kind of drew you in?
Well, the community just keeps on growing. I love the fact that people now all over the world are doing this, and it's a way for us to keep in touch with people. When the war in Ukraine started, I looked on our list and we had 8 people from Ukraine. So I reached out to them and said, "Are you guys safe? Are you okay?" And So I did hear back from about half of them.
Okay.
Two had ended their streak because they couldn't do it. The safety wasn't there. And then I did hear from a couple people who were, this is keeping them going just because keeping active and, having something.
Some kind of normalcy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is doing it. In fact, I just heard from a woman from Ukraine this morning that she is safe and she's continuing her streak, but it's
That
still,
is,
it's
Wow.
a challenge. What's going on with them?
yeah,
Yeah, that
it
is a challenge.
They've been in my prayers every day since all
Absolutely.
this started.
Ukraine,
So,
COVID. I mean, that's the other one that you mentioned during COVID. I was reading an article about Robert Ravencraft. I think that I think
He's
that
my
you presented
buddy.
him with the award. Yeah, tell us a little bit about that because he's been on the list. He's not the longest, but he's been on the list for a while. And I was reading that they actually allowed him when the beaches were closed to allow him to keep running. Tell us a little bit about what you know of his story and what you did.
Like a lot of people, I was first introduced to him through the Streak Registry. He would send in articles, and I'm like, this guy is every day on the beach. At least for me, I mix it up, and I've traveled, but he's every day on the beach. I did get a chance to meet him. My running streak hit 30 years in the end of 2019, and his was the day after. So I flew down there. I gave him a plaque, and I met him. The mayor of Miami Beach was there. They had a plane go by with a banner saying "Congratulations on 45 years."
Wow.
And
wow.
so, yeah, he's a great guy, a very good guy for our association because he just gets a lot of publicity. And you're right, he was the only person when Miami Beach shut down because of COVID. They made an exception that he could run on the beach there.
Wow.
You know what's powerful about that is the power of a streak. I mean, I just think about that, and here is an individual that has been consecutively consistent in his life for 45 years, and now there's something that is potentially going to shut that down, and people seeing that rallied around and said, you know what? He's going to be running alone. Let's let him keep his streak alive.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is. I worry about him because he does. I know he's gone a couple times, or a period where he was at 5.5 miles a day, but he usually does 8 miles a day, and he's doing pretty slow times now. So it's taking him. He said one day it took him 4 hours to do that.
To do the 8
Wow.
miles. Yeah.
So I hope he kind of reduces his miles. Raven, if you're watching this right now, I love you. It's okay. You
It's okay to slow down a little.
slow down and do less.
Reduce a little bit, yeah.
We'll still count your streak.
Absolutely. And that brings up another little interesting thing that we found as we've studied streaking in all walks of life, not only in running and physical activity, but in others, is there's sometimes where, for example, we have people out there that have they start a streak of reading at least one page daily. And they find that for whatever reasons for them in the mix of their life, that one page daily gets a little bit too difficult. And so they can bring it back, or what we call step it down, to say one paragraph daily, at least one paragraph daily, because it's the floor, and the streak stays alive. Because in reading the page, I've been reading at least the paragraph. And that is something I think that is neat about the whole streaking, like what we said here with Robert. He's doing 8 miles a day. To be a part of, he can back that off. He's always been doing at least one, and therefore can keep the continuity of it and the consecutiveness of that streak alive. I think that's pretty cool.
I agree with you. I hope he does. I worry about him. But he has those following. He's got his own website. Really nice man. If you get a chance to meet him in person, I hope you interview him. He'd be a great guest for your association.
We're going to do it.
Cool.
Absolutely. We'd
Add
love to
that
have
the
him on.
list. One of the things that I've loved as we've been talking is that when we would talk to people about the 3 laws of streaking and that third law of having a community, people would often think that the community was part of accountability, that you had to have a community to be accountable. But it was interesting how much we learned that really what it came into was celebrating. And so I loved, as I asked you that question about the community, that your answer for what the community did was it kept you connected. It gave you the opportunity to meet new people and to celebrate their successes, and then also be there, as you mentioned, for Ukraine in times of need. I'm sure that with what they're going through, having somebody reach out and say, hey, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Just lends itself to that feeling that there's other people in the world that are paying attention to you and are noticing you and aware of you. And so that community becomes a real strength in both celebrating and supporting and just being there for each other. And then the opportunity to meet new people that are doing things that you love.
Well, with the Ukraine situation, I posted on Facebook. I had the 4 people that I heard from, and there was just such an outreach to those people. Some people said, I'm going to run for them, do their run. So because they can't run, it was just heartwarming. One woman from Prague actually even said, could you get in touch with them? Because we're taking refugees where I am, and reach out to them, let them know, let their family know that
we're here.
We're here for you. Yeah,
so that community becomes a huge part of a support to them in their life. That's really neat. I love that.
Yeah.
So the other question I was going to ask you is that what inspired you to be able to keep a record of this? So you started you started and said, oh, I've been doing this for 3 weeks. And then you were able to look back and notice that the longest you had done was 50 days. How were you keeping track of that? How did you know? And how have you kept the desire to keep a record the whole time?
Well, it started for me. I have I don't know if you can even see this, but I have a runner's log. A lot of people got this.
Oh, look at that.
Christmas, 1984, my boss, I just started running. So she gave me the Jim Fixx running log. Now, Jim Fixx is the guy who wrote a couple books in the 1970s and then died of a heart attack out on the run. So I think I got the last year he did it, and then this other guy took over from there. So I've been recording those runs. It actually has become an issue. We've had some people who wanted to get on our list, and usually we don't care. But if they have a really long streak, really we do vet them just to make sure. We don't have any Rosie Ruizes on our list. She's the one who's winning the Boston Marathon. So, and that people get mad at me, but if they haven't been recording it, we don't usually put them on our list for really long streaks.
So that is our law number 2: no record, no streak.
Yeah,
and that's just all there is to it. Yeah.
if you don't have that record, you just.
Go ahead, Mark.
I don't mean to, like they still have their streaks. I just can't verify it. And, a lot of people they know their number. Like people will send me emails like I'm 25 on the list, or I'm, 35 on the list. They know exactly where they are. And anytime we do add people, I did have one guy who made our top 10, and really, boy, did I vet him. He was like, I said, well, just go with your logbooks and just, make a recording, like you do a video of it. And he didn't know how to do that. So he was like scanning each page and setting. Luckily, he had like 30 or 40 days in there. But, it was one of those things. But if I didn't do that, people would really be upset that, well, who is this person? We haven't heard of them. And you're right about community. People, we put them on the list so they become accountable to the larger community. And people have, for whatever reason, didn't want to put themselves on that list for a long, long time. It's hard for us to know if they're legitimate or not.
Right, how they've done that.
The thing with the record, and this is one of the things that we've found, and I'm check this with you, and I'd love to know, because I know you keep a record of not only that you ran, but how many miles you ran that day. Right. And so I'm curious, and we want to hear the total number of miles that you've run to date in just a second. The thing that I see with the record as well is it's a record of credibility. It's for my own self-credibility. If I've been doing this consistently, a lot of times we'll talk to people who say, oh yeah, I've got a streak on that. Oh, I may have missed a couple of days. And what I say to them is, to me, it really doesn't matter that you've missed a couple of days. I mean, your streak is yours to go with whatever you want. But I think what happens inside of each one of us when we don't have that record is basically there's a little bit of self-doubt back there. Did I really do that thing? Did it really happen consecutively? And when you have the record, then that is absolute validation of your credibility. Yes, I've done it, and here's my record.
And some people forget we have a story of a guy who won the 1968 Boston Marathon. I won't mention his name. And he thought he had a streak, and we'd see him, and he's a great guy. He thought he had a streak, and then he said, "All right, I'll finally put it on." And then he went through his logbook. He's like, "Oh, I forgot that I was on vacation, or he for some day missed a day." So that's really another reason. You think you might have run that much, but again, if you don't record it, there's really no way of knowing.
Exactly. Which is one of the reasons why, and I'll just insert in here, we have a streaking app that anyone can download. It's Streaking, and it's free to everyone. And you can actually set up your streaks, not only your run streak if you have that, but also any other streaks. And here's the neat part, Mark, is you can create your own communities in there so that you can have, for example, the running streak it's the United States Streak Running Association, or Running Streak Association, whichever way that is, I remember. But that can be in there, and those communities can start to develop so that you can, in that, have another place to have a public record where it's just, and you can celebrate with everyone that's out there. Now, with that being said, tell us the number of miles. How many miles have you run to date?
Well, I record it every day, but let me have to look at the end. And my lifetime miles at the end of 2021 was 60,900.
60,900 miles.
We have a guy named Steve DeBoer, who you probably seen his column in our Running Streak newsletter. And I won't even make his list. You have to do over 70,000 miles just to even make his list of being within that group. The guy with the longest is Herb Fred from Texas. He's no longer with us, but he ran over 250,000 lifetime miles.
Wow.
I understand the circumference from the Earth to the moon is 240. I know it changes depending on where the moon is,
right?
But he has run to the moon and was on his way back. That's how many miles he had done.
And so I hope someone made him a T-shirt at some point that said, "I've run to the moon
and back, and I'm coming back.
And I'm on my way back."
On my way back. And the other thing too with him is he got hit by a car, so he didn't want to go outside, and so a lot of 125,000 was on a treadmill, or as we call it, dreadmills.
Right?
Yes,
yeah,
I was
no
going to
kidding.
say 125,000, and you can't say a treadmill because it had to have been a couple treadmills. He must have run through treadmills.
Yes, when he was alive, he would talk about treadmills and the best kind to get. So
I bet
on treadmills, he's amazing. And then we have a couple other people who have just recently crossed over the 200,000 mile.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
As I look at the list here of the top 5 streakers, so you've got John Sutherland, who's still, and these are the active streakers, right? I mean, the ones that I've got here: John Sutherland, Jim Pearson, Steve DeBoer, and Alex Galbraith. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, these individuals at it for 52, 50, and 50 years. I mean, this is just so inspiring. I mean, it just their consistency and what they do there. It's just so inspiring. Do you guys get together and talk every once in a while? I mean, this community, how do you meet together for conferences? What does that look like?
Yeah, we don't have conferences. And again, we're so spread out. But for example, with John Sutherland, when he hit 50 years, I flew out to California to give him a plaque. And Steve DeBoer was there. So we were there to celebrate John Sutherland. And when Jim Pearson, unfortunately, his streak is in February when I'm teaching, so I couldn't make his 50th anniversary, but I made Steve DeBoer's. And there we had John Sutherland was there, number 1 in the world. We had Jim Pearson, number 2, and Steve DeBoer. Alex wasn't there, but we had the top 3 in the world there. And
wow.
Yeah.
That's just phenomenal.
Is that kind of a neat place to be where you're among these people that have just been running for their life?
Yes,
Inspiring.
it was very cool to, come out there and be part of their celebration. I gave them a little plaque and,
Yeah.
That's
and
great.
said, thank you for what you do. And other streak runners were there too. We kind of posted it so other streak runners could come.
Good
But
comment.
when you,
Well, I'll tell you, Mark, when we have our first streaking conference, which will be this, we are definitely going to invite your streak runners to be out there with us as well. Because it's just such a wonderful thing to celebrate, which leads me to the other question that I had for you. What lessons, and this will be a little bit more on the philosophical side, but what lessons from streak running have you applied to life? Have you looked at and said, you know what, this has really helped me out in my profession, in my personal life? What are some of the things that you've thought, you know what, that has really been as a result of or in benefit from the streak run?
yeah. Well, one area was I never called in sick for work. And so this, I'm up for promotion this year from an associate professor to a full professor. And so we had to put together, what are our highlights. So I wrote some books and I put that in and, some of the things I have done for the college. And one of the things I did, which was my curse, was I said I hadn't called in sick since becoming a teacher in 1992. And then sure enough, within a month of that, I had to say, I got COVID.
I can't come in. But it's
So-
okay because COVID was the universal, I think everybody understood. So I don't know if it really counts as a sick day
Well,
when everyone's okay
well,
with
what
it.
happened was, so I tested positive on a Friday. The classes has just started. I probably shouldn't have been there that first week, but I didn't know. I really thought
Right.
I had stomach issues. So I just to rule it out, my college actually had a testing center. So after I was done with my class on Friday, I got tested and I got the results on Saturday. So I let my college know. And they're like, well, since your symptoms happened the Saturday before, you can actually come to work on Monday.
Oh.
So we have an interim chair this semester, and she's like, I really don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
We have a woman who's pregnant, and we have other people who have, health issues. Why don't you teach remotely? And since I had been doing that, for a lot of the year anyway, I just told my students, we'll do it over Zoom.
do it
So that's what
right.
we do. So technically, I've not called in sick, but
I was going to say, if you still taught over Zoom, you didn't call in sick. You were still
didn't.
there.
No, and I would have
showed
shown up, but I have shown up when I broke my nose. That was not a good thing to show up to class, but I did, and I taught those classes. I usually find that with colds, you probably shouldn't run when you first get a cold, but after a couple days, you kind of sweats it out of you.
Yeah.
So, and I feel maybe because I have been running, I've been healthier than many people. So,
You're running the Boston Marathon still. You're doing great.
That was actually with the COVID thing that got a little shaky because I had some of my slowest times trying to do 3 miles, trying to get that, and I felt lightheaded. So it only lasted like a couple of weeks. I felt that way, but I really felt okay. My times are. Lately, I've been able to do better. I just did a race on Saturday, won my age, so I'm like, okay, I'm back.
Okay, I'm
You're
back in the game.
Congratulations.
Yes.
What other things would you say from that? So work, been healthy. I mean, you've been healthy, you've been strong with work. Any other areas where that consecutiveness has really helped you as you look at it?
Well, that's part of it, just showing up for your events. People say, well, it's raining out, I can't run, or it's snowing. We in the streak business or streak running business say it's not a weather issue, it's a clothing issue. So, I just try to wear my stuff. And so I don't get freaked out. I try to show up when I get invited to things. I go, I show up. And I think that's part of being, a streak runner. We just get it done. We show up.
We show up. Yeah.
I love it's a clothing issue a lot of times.
Yes.
I think we should make a T-shirt out of that, Jeff. It's not a streaking issue. It's not a weather issue. It's a clothing issue. But actually, I would say I'm a streaker. I just show up. That would be really great. That would be an awesome T-shirt. I also wonder, you have got to have a massive amount of credibility among your colleagues because they know you're going to be consistent. and among other runners. I mean, just people know, because Jeff has a streak for checking his emails. That's one of his streaks, that he can't have more than 10 emails in his inbox at the end of the day. And so I had someone ask me one time, what's the best way to get a hold of your husband? And I'm like, well, send him an email. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, well, are you sure he'll see it? And I was able to be like, I guarantee you he'll see it today, because I know he has this streak to check his email. So this ability to know that this person is going to be consistent, like you're like, oh, they'll show up.
And just for record's sake, that streak is now 2,211 days old. So
very cool.
So you know.
By the way, I loved your book, and my wife and I had conversations about it. I'm sticking to just running, but I thought to myself, that whole flossing thing, that would be a good idea for me to get involved in, because there are certain aspects, certain things that you wish you had done better. And I thought, that might work for me.
That would be.
Well, the flossing is at 2,265 days. So I haven't missed since we set the streak. And that was, and again, really, Mark, I have to thank you and your streakers and your association for the inspiration behind this. I mean, I know you're keeping it to running, and now streaking is just exploding out to so many other areas. We just have thousands of people that use the app for so many good reasons, running being one of them, but physical, personal, spiritual, and emotional, all of those areas, they're using a streak to do something. And it's really changing the way people go about how they run their everyday life. And so we're just so excited that you had chosen to do the running streak so long ago and decided to publish it. It's just so excellent.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm one of just many, but who got involved in the running thing. But your book really did give me a lot of insight on my streaks. I was like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. I related a lot to it, but I didn't really think about other areas of my life. So it really gave me some perspective on that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah.
So if you were to give advice to people that want to start streak running, what advice would you give them? And how do you encourage people who maybe want to start, but they're a little bit later, and because running in general, but I also think streak running can be intimidating to people because you're highly active, motivated, consistent people.
Right.
And sometimes people can be intimidated by that. But if someone wanted to start streak running, what advice would you give them to start? And what advice would you give to someone who's maybe starting a little bit later? Like they just learned about it and they're like, oh, I would have loved to do this earlier, but I didn't. And how would they get started kind of doing it now?
Well, I usually do give advice. It's probably not a good, what they say, advice, wise men don't need it and fools don't heed it. So I probably shouldn't be giving people advice. And I do have a reputation where I am. Every year, my college makes us watch a sexual harassment tape. And I get done with it. I don't sexually harass people, but I running harass people. Like, okay, why aren't you doing this race for us? Why aren't you doing this? So I'm trying to do less of that. But when people, I usually say it just gives you consistency. All you have to do is a mile a day. You can do a mile a day. Come on, you can do a mile a day. Yeah, you can do it. And it just gives you consistency. We changed the conversation from will I run that day to when can I fit it in? So to us, that makes a difference, because everybody's kind of, you come up with an excuse for one day, and then the next day you're missing 2 days in a week, in a month, and the next thing you're out of the whole, exercising and running habit. So for us, it's kind of just keeps us going.
What you just said, so good. I mean, I think we need to pause there for our streakers. You heard Mark say that you miss one day, and then before you know it, you've missed 3 or 7 or a week or 2 weeks or whatever it is.
And pretty soon you're not doing it anymore.
You're not doing it anymore.
And that mind shift from not if, but when.
Yeah.
And that is a significant mind shift. And it's interesting, we kind of had an experience the other day where we had gone skiing all day and had kind of gotten our exercise in, and then we had some appointments later in the day. Anyway, we weren't able to get to our run until the evening, and we were tired. It had been a long day of skiing, and my legs were tired. They
As were
tired.
mine.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But it was interesting. The streak is what got us out there to do the run. And it was after the run that I was like, I am so grateful for the streak to recognize that I wasn't going to throw away all of those weeks and years of effort for one moment that I was kind of tired, that I was, and I think the streak does that. And what you were saying too of not if, but when am I going to do this?
Yeah. Well, Mark, it's been our pleasure talking to you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Streakers everywhere. If you want to look at the running streak list, it's at www.runeveryday.com, and you'll see all of the streakers that are listed on there. You can absolutely sign up for it. Again, when you can register for a streak, if you're a runner out there, it's when you've got 1 year of consecutive running and you've done at least a mile a day, and like Mark said, keep your record because no record, no streak.
Well, we use the honor system for people who didn't start in the 20th century. It's people who started the 20th century, then we start,
You need a little bit more proof if you're in that other century.
Yeah. 21st century, you're fine.
Fantastic. Feel free to also download the Streaking app. The Streaking app will allow you to keep track of not only your running streaks, but any other streak that you have out there, reading, writing, going to school, any of those things. You've got that opportunity in the Streaking app. Also, you can pick up the Streaking book at anywhere books are sold. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today. Jami, it's always a pleasure to be with you. And for everyone else, if you want to get a hold of us or would like to talk with us on the show, give us an email at Jeffrey, Jeffery, at streakingmastery.com or
Jami at Jami at streakingmastery.com.
Until we talk again,
keep streaking.